Living in downtown Chicago usually requires accepting a simple economic reality. You are going to pay a premium. Rents are high, inventory is tight, and genuine deals are rare. So when a one-bedroom apartment right downtown opens up for less than half the normal price, questions should be asked, especially when the landlord avoids eye contact and vaguely mentions that the previous tenant left suddenly due to family issues. But in a tough economy, the signature often goes on the lease anyway. For the first 7 days in apartment 14C, the building delivered exactly what was promised. The neighbors were quiet, the old heating system kept the cold weather out, and the narrator experienced nothing out of the ordinary. It felt like a massive win. Then the nightly routine began. The television started turning itself on, exactly at midnight. The first time, it woke the tenant with static blasting through the room, the screen casting a bright white glow across the pitch-black apartment.
Pressing the power button on the remote did nothing. Walking over to physically unplug the TV from the wall should have killed the display instantly. But the screen stayed on, glowing, unplugged. A broken remote or bad wiring is an inconvenience. But when a device continues to pull power from a source that no longer exists, the physical laws of the immediate environment have been overridden. The mechanical interference soon gave way to sounds leaking through the freezing walls, specifically the faint, unmistakable sound of children laughing. The screen shifted from white noise to a shaky, vintage recording of a snow-covered playground. Kids in heavy winter jackets ran around the frame. Then one little girl stopped moving. She turned to face the camera, staring directly out of the television with a smile that was entirely too wide and perfectly still.
The next morning, a casual question to an upstairs neighbor about electrical problems revealed a grim pattern. Nobody stays in 14C for more than a month. They all start hearing the same things at night: the static, the footsteps, the laughing. The neighbor explained the fate of the previous tenant. He called 911 in absolute panic, claiming that someone had crawled out of his television. By the time police arrived, they found him sitting alone in the hallway, completely catatonic. The television serves as a bridge, actively monitoring the occupant and turning a standard appliance into a tool for psychological isolation. To document what was happening, the tenant decided to record the room. They set up a phone camera at 11:55 p.m., pointing the lens at the unplugged screen. At exactly 12 a.m., the room erupted. The TV snapped on, the apartment lights flickered violently, and in a single second, the recording phone's battery plummeted from 81% down to 2.
The words, "You were not supposed to move in," flashed across the glass. Then the broadcast changed to a live, top-down surveillance angle of the bedroom itself. The tenant watched themselves stand frozen in the room, but while the real person stood perfectly still, the digital reflection on the screen slowly turned its head. The version on the screen smiled, and a voice whispered, "Behind you." The broadcast glitched. For a fraction of a second, the smiling girl from the playground manifested in the actual room. Sprinting into the hallway didn't stop the assault. As the tenant ran for the stairs, every television in every surrounding apartment turned on at exactly the same time, flooding the corridors with synchronized static and the sound of that little girl laughing. Outside, the contrast was jarring. Heavy snow was falling. Cars drove by. People walked on the sidewalks.
The city was operating as if the terror inside the building simply didn't exist. Then the phone rang, an unknown number. Answering it yielded only the hiss of static, followed by the faint voice of a young girl whispering, "You forgot me?" Leaving all your belongings behind feels like a victory when you survive the night, but escaping a physical address means nothing if the terror has already attached itself to you. 3 weeks went by in a different location. No return trips to 14C. Not for clothes, not for a laptop. But eventually, the tenants started searching the building's history online. A newspaper archive from 1997 reveals a dark history. A massive fire gutted the building that year, claiming the lives of an entire family. The parents and a son were recovered, but according to the records, The body of the 7-year-old daughter, Emily Harper, was never found. Attached to that article was a black and white photograph. It was the exact same girl from the playground broadcast. The one with the wide, motionless smile. The laptop was slammed shut. The logical brain tries to believe that finding the history means the mystery is solved and the threat is contained in the past. Then, the living room in the new apartment began to fill with the sound of static. Slowly, entirely on its own, the new television turned on. Emily Harper was never strictly bound to the floorboards of apartment 14C. Once you have seen its face, the haunting operates like a virus. It doesn't need a specific room anymore.